Yeah, we look okay.
Okay.
All right, look at that.
Ready to rock and roll.
Ready to rock. We're dual laptops today.
I know. This is serious stuff.
Well, yeah, maybe as serious as we get, maybe.
Turn myself up a little bit.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. Also, I'm looking at this. I'm like, I got to adjust these dials because we've had guests in here before, and I'm like, making sure all the other microphones are off so we don't get some weird...
studio guests.
I know.
Yes.
You let them in and, the next thing you know, you're like, hey, who touched my stuff?
Who moved the dial?
You're not supposed to touch my stuff. Don't you know that? I think this will be fun. So I thought today we could also talk about a couple of cool things, but one is we had teased... We didn't give people homework, but we had set up and teased this Pew Research article, so we have to talk about that.
We do, yes.
And then, of course, we've got some other things because, again, this has been as always, it is like a busy week with all the things kind of happening around AI and these new announcements. I mean, last time we were talking about the Walmart and ChatGPT connection, all that kind of stuff. And of course, it's like, a week later, they drop another update, which is this new browser thing that we'll talk about.
So every week we try and get away from AI and we just cannot escape the vortex. I
was literally just having that conversation the other day at coffee with somebody, and they're like, no matter what we do, we can't get away from that. I'm like, it has become the conversational black hole, right? You're like, even if the intent is like, hey, we're going to talk about
reach escape velocity. You're stuck. Yeah.
That's right. It's like, we're going to talk about gardening today, and before it's like topic A, topic B, AI and gardening.
Well, actually, no. So the physicist in me is imagining the rubber sheet. You know how you use a rubber sheet to sort of represent sort of gravity.
And you put
with
that ball in it.
So we're on the rubber sheet, and sort of AI is this massive gravitational pull where no matter what you do, you cannot get out of the void that's created.
Right. We're caught, and what was the term when you I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. He likes to in his way, right? He has this poetic way of explaining death by black hole.
Okay.
Right. So like if you're falling into it, you get eventually this term of spaghettification.
Right.
As you're as like all of the atoms of who you are get extruded into like this like atomic sized spaghetti string of
forget about sort of super intelligence and existential risk. It's the AI spaghettification of life as we know.
That's right. And it's like, no matter what you do, you're going at feet first. And you're like, but what's weird, like, I mean, total aside, but I like those thought experiments too, because you think about time in such a weird way, right? So like with this understanding, if you were to sort of, as you're falling into the event horizon, right, that you would be simultaneously spaghettified and pulled apart, but also being able to see it happen because like time no longer, like
you mean your eyes are in a different time zone.
It's like this weird
time dilation. Yeah, your eyes are sort of, what is happening to my feet?
That's right. Because your feet are closer to the event horizon than you are. So I'm like, this is some trippy stuff.
Yes.
I mean, it is the season. It's Halloween is coming up. So I guess, it's fair game to talk about even the most interstellar spooky, whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I think this would be a fun one. So
okay, we're just gonna dive in.
Let's just get rolling.
Okay.
All right, welcome to Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like what will it mean to be human in the future? I'm Sean Leahy, joined by my interstellar co-host extraordinaire
and black hole explorer, Andrew Maynard.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be fun. We're already off and running. All right. So we had teased up the Pew Research article. And for everyone, it was in the show notes last time. So if you did your homework, congratulations, you get an A. I will make sure to have that linked as well so people can look this up themselves. But I think I'd like to spend a little bit of time just kind of going on because, and I think the reason, so we've talked in the past, again, I should have looked it up a few episodes ago. We had touched on an article, a survey that the Pew Research had done around AI, but it was specifically around like AI experts and non-AI experts.
That's right. Yes.
I believe it was
looking at different perspectives, whether you're an expert or not. Yes.
And I believe it was US centric. I think it was only in the United States. And of course it was AI experts think AI is going to be huge and meaningful and be impactful in everyone's life. Non-AI experts were like, AI what? Who? What?
So then this one looks much more broadly than that, and it looks at general opinions around AI and thoughts about AI sort of benefits, risks, regulation, and so on and so forth across multiple countries.
Yes, across 25 countries. And so it's entitled How People Around the World View AI.
Yes.
So I think it, and I think it's really interesting. And even their tagline under their title is more are concerned than excited about its use, and more trust their own country and the EU to regulate than trust the US or China.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, interesting. I think this research survey hit at a very interesting time because, we were just talking before we hit record on all the cameras and stuff was, we've been talking for a while on Modem Futura here around all the things that AI has been up to and doing, but then also sort of conversely to that, also this growing, if I go back, how many episodes now have we entered slop? And, and trust me, we got some slop coming today, but
speak for yourself.
This growing also discontent or uncertainty
but there's also the bubble here. And I'm finding this more and more that if I sort of talk to my close circle, everybody is doing everything with AI and everybody has an opinion, whether it's sort of AI is great or AI is bad. But you move outside that and it's amazing how many people are just oblivious or confused. I've just come from a meeting this morning where there are a fair chunk of people in the auditorium who really weren't sure what AI was or what all the fuss is about. And I think this is the reality that we face, that there are bubbles within bubbles with AI. And one of them is the social bubble where an immense number of people either don't know what AI is or don't really care what it is, or it's just something at the periphery of their awareness.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And that's a reminder because I think also, again, we're in this bubble where we are surrounded by people, even if they're not using AI the way that we are, they're thinking about it, they're critiquing, they're doing this kind of stuff. But it is so true that when you forget how your perspective gets shifted inside these bubbles.
Right.
And then going out and talking to people who don't share the same sort of professional bubbles, even social bubbles. And then you're like, wait, what? How do you not know about
that
this?
Conversation when they say, A, what? What exactly are you talking about?
Or it's the A1 again, or the, right? I mean.
So this is the joke on us. If people don't understand this, never mind. But there was the thing about sort of this person referring to AI as A1, as in A1 source. But the reality is there are a surprising number of people out there who would say A1,
because you just a 1 and an L and an I all look very similar depending on the typeface you use.
I use Apple A1 every day.
A1 makes things better. I don't know. But it is interesting, and I think this was also very welcome because again, even if we're trying to get at those multiple perspectives, I mean, even things like LinkedIn as a social media platform where we spend, I spend a lot of my. I would say I probably spend the majority of my social media time there.
Okay. I was going to say, I thought you were going to say the majority of your time.
No, I would have
this
way
is
more.
Why you get paid the big bucks to surf LinkedIn every day.
I would hope if I spent the majority, the number of followers and people that I have, and if that was the majority of my time, that would be a very sad self-realization.
Probably the saddest thing ever. You are a LinkedIn doom scroll.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I get too I talked about this last time. I get too annoyed by all the AI slop and I'm like, I'm out. But we stay in that. This echo chamber of people again who are, slapping AI onto any form they can in some way, but it stays so prevalent that you forget, or again, it's that kind of like cold splash of water of reality to be like, oh, right, there are people who even in today, that they're walking around with us who are like, never heard of it, don't care. What does this have to do with me?
And of course, this survey actually begins to illuminate that.
Absolutely.
And like all surveys, it's sort of limited. You have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it still gives you insights which you wouldn't otherwise have in terms of where people's heads are at with AI.
That's right. And I will put a plug and point it out right away, because again, I did this anytime an organization puts out a survey or a research or anything of this note, first thing I do is look for the methodology section. One, to just make sure that it is in fact there. It is, and they do a really nice job of just going through. So it's a complex survey. So it was not a one-shot deal.
Yep.
It spanned 25 different countries, asking, and even there that, they're using a scale of how people, respond. And what I appreciate, again, the methodology goes through and explains how, even by certain regions, how they had to change culturally, potentially had to change the scale, wording, and things like that. So, so for anyone who is interested in the research or wants to dig deeper in it, again, massive plug for the Pew Research Center for doing that, for including that methodology section. So if you're questioning the integrity of the survey or whatever,
you can dig
go
into
look.
it. And Pew Research have got a long track record of really solid research for surveys.
Yep, they do, and that's really appreciated. So should we just, they
dive in.
I was gonna say, they don't, again, I'll say this. Another thing I really enjoy about the way that these reports come out is that Pew does not bury the lead with their juicy findings. They put it right up front and then allow you to dig deeper.
Right, yes, yeah.
So let's answer the question. How do people around the world feel about the rise of AI in daily life? Well, it turns out that more people are concerned about it than happy about it.
Yes.
In that sense.
I'm just looking at this. In fact, even before you get there, so this is the opening page, and we'll sort of dig down into the sort of the minutiae here. But first question, have you heard of AI or read about artificial intelligence? And this is everything aggregated together. 14% of people asked had heard nothing at all about AI. They had no idea what artificial intelligence was. And that feels astounding to me in a world where we just can't escape it. But then you look at the rest of it, and then 47% of all people asked across all these countries said they'd only heard a little about it. So it really wasn't on their radar. So this, from a broad societal perspective, yes, it's in their lives, but people aren't aware of it.
That's exactly it. And I think that's, to me, the thing that the takeaway for this also deeply resonates with something we've talked about, quite a bit, is the fact that a lot of people may not be aware of how AI could be or already is impacting their life. And so this, to me, when I look at this, my thing is like, well, we need to inform this 60% here that are,
because it is impacting their lives. It's the hidden hand of the big AI companies that are infiltrating everything. So whether you know it or not, or like it or not, AI is having an impact on your life.
Everything down to, even like in the agricultural space, right? What's being bought and sold in terms of like the crop yields that are coming in. Like that's not maybe in some cases it's a person calculate, but a lot of times even those systems are being automated through these, platforms and whatnot. So it is, to me, that is this like warning bell. I don't know if that's too dramatic, but
I think it's a flag to indicate that there need to be more conversations. And to me, and this is before we get on to sort of are people excited or concerned about it, if people don't know about it, it gives an opening for other people to decide the future for them, rather than them having a hand in sort of nudging toward the future they want.
Exactly. And I think, and again, throughout the history of our show, we've been very open in talking about the dangers of that consolidation of not only the power or the technology, but when we think about it from a futures perspective, the consolidation of that, this concept of, again, coming back to the used future, that it is a handful of companies and organizations that are putting their finger, lead ball, I don't know, on the scale to really sort of put out there what they envision the world to be as the future. And to me, again, that's that piece, is that group. I want to be able to activate them.
I know. I feel we need a question in these surveys, which is, do you want somebody else to decide your future, or do you want a hand in deciding?
Exactly.
And I would hope most people say, I would like a hand in deciding, in which case you need to address the following question.
Exactly. Because I think that's the missing piece here, is that with all of these things, right? Like these futures should not happen upon you. You should be a participant in defining what those mean. And that figure, of looking at the people who have heard about it a little or not at all, that is concerning to me in that realm. Because again, as we're sitting right now in a very fluid state between companies that are forging ahead, some with internal regulations, some with none at all, with government regulations, which we can talk about as we get into the trust part.
Right.
But government regulations taking different approaches. That group of people, that is the majority. And those are the people that ultimately are electing officials, putting people into office, what have you, that are then thus responsible for creating those exact policies and ideas and frameworks and guardrails and things like that will ultimately have a massive impact on their life.
That's exactly it. And then that brings us to concerns and benefits or excitement.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, and so you've looked at the methodology closer than I have.
Yeah.
So when they asked people whether they're more concerned or more excited, was that everybody or just the people that actually knew about AI?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because, and the reason I ask is we were talking about this before we started recording, but I've been involved with surveys around emerging technologies for years and years now. And one of the things we see is if you ask people a question about a technology that they don't really know much about, generally you'll find 30% of people are excited about it, 30% of people are concerned about it. And these figures sort of match that not fairly closely.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I'll have to dig into that to see if it is, because they do a pretty good job. I'm digging through it right now.
Right.
I should use AI to do this.
I know you should have just.
I have it. Well, I have it here.
Okay.
Here, a vamp for me for a second.
Well, I'm actually going to go over these figures. So when sort of participants were asked sort of whether they're more concerned or excited about AI or more excited than concerned, only 16% of people said they were more excited than concerned.
Yeah.
So put that into context with the companies that are driving AI into society saying this is the thing that is going to transform everything, governments that are investing in there, universities who are saying we have to go as fast as possible to embrace AI and incorporate AI into everything. Only 16% across the world said they are more excited than concerned. On the other hand, 34% said they're more concerned than excited. And then the rest of them were not quite sure where they stood. And that tells me that we've got to have conversations that focus on the concerns as well as the benefits. If you pretend the concerns aren't there or that they're trivial or irrelevant, you're going to basically disenfranchise a whole bunch of people that you actually need at the table as you're beginning to bring this into society.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this thing's taking a while. It's thinking real hard. So we'll come back to it. But
we can come. Yes, yeah. I suspect if they ran the survey like these surveys are usually run, this is a question that was asked of everybody. And they may have even sort of given a little sort of explanation. We'll have to dig into that. But the reality is that there are a lot of people out there that are concerned or unsure about it, which means we need to be talking about how to navigate those concerns and how to ensure this is a technology that is developed in ways that people want it to be developed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, again, these numbers are very telling, I think, in some ways. And it's interesting too, because they're broken down also, they have an aggregate, right, which kind of puts this whole thing as just one lump kind of overall.
Yep.
But also then broken down by those 25 different countries.
That's right. And that's when things get really interesting.
It's quite interesting. Picking on the United States, for example.
I wish we could do this in real time where we could ask the listeners sort of, how many people in the US do you think that sort of have heard nothing at all about AI? But the trouble is we can't do that. So we're going to have to, yes.
I'm like, I could get like a Zoom number. We should have like a call in, you know what I mean? Or we could live stream, but then of course, I don't know.
But I've seen that you brought up the US. I've got the figures in front of me. So the US was actually sort of pretty good. But if you look at the percentage of people that were asked in the US, whether they'd heard a lot about AI or little or nothing at all, 47% said they'd heard a lot. So just under half the people asked said that they'd heard a lot about artificial intelligence. On the other hand, 5% said nothing at all. They had no idea what this AI thing was.
Yeah. No, which is wild. And then you look at the comparison to that is also then how they feel about the excitement of it. right. And 50% report that they are more concerned than excited. And only 38%.
And this again is the US still.
The US.
Yes.
In the US here, where AI is king, man. Where it's, AI, what is burn, baby, burn, or whatever when it comes to AI. But also disproportionately have the number of AI leading companies.
That's right. Yes.
But in the US, so 50% say they are more concerned than excited.
Yes.
And only 38% say they are equally concerned as excited.
Yep.
And 10%, only 10% are more excited than concerned.
Yeah.
So that 10%, and I'm going to guess excited. You can draw on a map in California exactly where that 10% is.
That's right.
Right in Silicon Valley.
But as well, you look at this chart, and I've got it in front of me. So it lists all of the countries in rank, with the one at the top where you've got most concern and the one at the bottom where you've got effectively most excitement. US is number one. The greatest concerns come from US.
Yep.
And second to the US is Italy, of all places.
Yeah, interesting, right?
So it goes US, Italy, Australia, Brazil, Greece, Canada, and then UK. So actually, the Brits are more excited about AI than the Americans.
By a significant, 13 over 10%, that's, looking at the size of the sample, that's got to be significant.
Right.
What's going on there?
Yeah. Which again, so this is not about is AI good or is AI bad?
No.
But it's about we have got to have a conversation as a society about how we navigate this new technology.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting looking at some of these other countries like Germany, for example, which in the EU has, I think, do they have the largest number of seats in the EU?
You're asking me.
They must. Well, Germany, France, they must have the largest number of seats.
Yes.
But 53% are equal, but 17% are excited.
Yes.
So I think you can see some of these. It's interesting. Just again, you pick across these. I'll go back.
This is totally counterintuitive. Europe is more excited about AI than the US.
Yeah. Also, but interestingly, I'm curious if that leads to then other questions around trust about regulation. Right?
Yes.
So and I would be curious. This would be one of those things now. If anyone's interested in doing this kind of this is where again your research hat comes on, and you say, well, this is what we found, and this is what we found. And then the question is why, right? So why is it that way?
Yeah.
But because it's really fascinating because you start looking at some of these, country, the Netherlands, France, Poland. I'm looking at European EU countries, Spain, where they're that in the graph, you can see they do a nice color code of, a blue is concerned, tan is equal, and green is excited.
Yep.
But you can see this really thick band of that equally excited and concerned.
So reasonable people who are trying to sort of work out sort of where this is going.
Yeah.
Yes. But then you mentioned the regulation.
Yeah, let's get to that.
So that is because it ties in with this, because the next plot is asking people whether they have not a lot of trust or quite a bit of trust in their own government to regulate.
So their own country, their own whatever governing agency.
So, and then you look at some of the European countries, Germany, the Netherlands, UK, Sweden, and all of those, more people think that their country or their government is really going to do a decent job of regulating AI. So Germany, for instance, 70% have a lot of trust or some trust in the government to do the right thing, and only 20% are not so clear that they will. You compare that to the US. The US, 47% of respondents said pretty much they don't trust the government to get this right.
Yeah, for sure. Even I'm looking at, there's a chart here, what page is this on? 7, that's putting them all together. Like as a categorical group, the EU, 53% say that they have a lot or some trust in their own government. To the US, it's 37%.
Yeah.
Right? And so it swings the other way. So 48%-ish, 47-48% say they do not. So basically half think that it's not
and of course, you look at the sort of regulation and governance side of things. Europe have really been ahead of the curve in trying to work out how to do this. Now, whether they've got it right or wrong is a completely different question. But they have put a lot of time and energy into trying to create policies and regulations around AI that steer it towards social good and away from social bad. Whereas the US, they're beginning to catch up, but it's really messy and patchy. And so you have a number of states that are really trying to do this. California has been ahead of the curve there. The US federal government's perspective is basically we cannot afford to put any regulatory barriers at all in front of AI. AI is so important. We have got to go as fast as possibly possible. And if things get broken on the way, things get broken.
Yep. And that's that different approach, right? Is I think I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see, like, as we fast forward the timeline here, into 5 years, 15 years, 30 years, because I mean, by that time we'll definitely start to see those unintended consequences come up. But it is interesting to see, again, the comparing the strategies, and because the EU, I mean, even I'm trying to remember, I don't have the timeline, the exact timeline, but the EU was I think the first sort of large government agency to put out their
large block of countries.
Countries.
Both in terms of coming up with draft AI regulations and then beginning to implement
them.
And there are a lot of challenges there. There have been a lot of critiques of whether it doesn't go far enough or whether it goes too far. But the fact is that they were thinking about how do you put guardrails behind or around this technology.
And that's, I mean, and part of it, right? Like, does it go too far? Does it not go far enough? That's politics. That is always going to be the question, right?
So, and you're never going to please everybody.
And that should be the question that's on the table, because that means it is not done. That it is, and that's the way it should be. It should be a living. And what I do like also about, again, and this gets into some of the policy wonk area of stuff. But one of the nice things about some of the way that the EU does their policy regulations is they allow for adaptable and changes to come quickly, as opposed in the US, it is a law that goes down. And then you can amend and you can change, but it's not so simple. And the EU is much more, the way that they put those policies down is much more...
It's much more flexible and inclusive as well. And again, this is partially down to the different philosophies of the different economic regions. The EU rather is far more focused on social good, and they assume that if you focus on social good, everything else will fall into place. The US is far more focused on the economy and economic growth, and the assumption is if you get that right, everything falls into place. Don't laugh.
It's like sometimes it hurts so much you just gotta laugh to let it out.
But the other thing that strikes me looking at this sort of tension between people that really aren't aware of AI, people that are concerned about AI, and the lack of regulatory trust. That is a recipe for disaster, where you've got a lot of people in a country who either aren't aware or they're asking tough questions, and there is no strong regulatory framework. That leads to a social and a political tension that has got to give at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that's really, I mean, again, I keep coming back to this idea of, that it is that participatory nature that has to be there, because in a vacuum, people will reach for that power or decide, hey, I've got it solved. Don't worry about it. I got it.
And you can understand the tension here. So this is a fast-moving technology, and it is a transformative technology. And there is absolutely an argument here from multiple fronts that we need to go fast. We need to go fast in order to really see the benefits. And on a geopolitical stage, there is an argument going fast to make sure that somebody else doesn't come along and weaponize the technology in a way which disadvantages you. I understand the need to go fast. And yet at the same time, you cannot go fast blindfold. The analogy I used to use when I used to teach risk is, if you're running towards a cliff edge with a blindfold on, you can go as fast as you like, but the consequences are not going to be nice.
That's right.
You've got to be you've got to be open-eyed. You've got to be able to sort of see at least up to the horizon and be able to sort of shift direction very agilely. And if you don't do that, two things are going to happen. And that effectively means that you've got to have some degree of participation, but you've got to work out how to do that agilely. If you don't do that, you have speed determined by dogma. So you have a very small group of players who decide which direction to go in and how fast to go. And because they're a small group of players, they are blinkered. They can't see the big picture. They can't see the cliff that's coming up. Because they're excluding all of those people that be waving the red flags and say, you may not want to go in this direction.
No, I actually really like that analogy too, because I'm thinking about, like, in my mind, I've got this picture drawn, right? Of you're like, there's this massive cliff that you can't see. And then but because you could see the tension there too, of like, you don't want to go over the cliff. But if you can get to the very edge of it first, there's a reward. But even that, right? So you're like, if you're running with your eyes open, you're going to be fighting all of the signals that are telling you you're headed in a bad spot. All these signals, right? As humans, we have evolution to thank for warning us, like, hey, idiot, don't run off this ledge. You will not survive. But that starts to factor in. And then if you're one of those people who has fear of heights. Boy, do you know it when your knees buckle and your mouth gets watery and your hands start sweating. But you're getting these signals from the environment that are telling you you're approaching danger.
Right.
If you've got that blindfold on, you are you're not singing idiot who's running full blown ahead.
But actually, there's another type of persona here, which worries me even more, and that is the persona. And I'm thinking about sort of entrepreneurial individuals and companies here who actually have partially the blinkers off, so they can see forward, they can see the cliff edge, they're going faster and faster and faster. And when somebody asks, what are you going to do when you get there? They'll say, don't worry, because the technology is going to teach us how to create a bridge so we can go over the edge.
Someone's going to catch me.
Well, no, not somebody's going to catch you. Somehow miraculously, we're going to extend the edge so we never fall off.
That's right.
It's magical thinking to think that somehow sort of the land is going to continue because AI is going to start manufacturing land.
What was it? Which Indiana Jones? Is that the Lost Ark? No. I forget where he takes that. It's like, you must take a leap of faith. And there's like this invisible bridge. And you just take a step, right? Right. It's like, that's the mentality. It's like, there's something there. Of course it'll be fine.
So you've got to ask, who is telling you there's something there?
Well, yeah, it's your own people saying,
it's the people behind you.
Just keep going faster, Bill. We'll find the edge. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking, the same too. I really like that analogy because the reverse is true too. If you were to see that danger and risk and become paralyzed to even move forward, you don't go anywhere,
which you also don't want.
So you get left behind. And so I do really like it's finding that balance of approaching it safely and carefully with a measured speed that would allow you to stop without,
even better, turn through 90 degrees and run along the edge rather than going over.
Get to that maximal point and then stay there safely rather than and then you have that constant feedback of you can see the risk and monitor it, and if it changes, then
Of course, and of course, there is another analogy here, which is the lemming analogy. Everybody who just sort of blindly sort of follows the person with the blindfold over the edge, and even worse, the people that can see it and say, "Well, this is what everybody else is doing, therefore I've got to do it."
And eventually, enough people do that, there will be a bridge.
The bodies sort of pile up.
I just think I heard somebody again. It's getting close to Halloween, and somebody was talking about World War Z, the zombie, and I just have this visual of this that's like mountain of zombie people, and I'm like, lemmings, zombies.
This is the solution to the future of AI. It's the zombie users that create the human body's bridge to get to the future. Are you an AI zombie? Are you part of the solution? Just somebody else getting to the future?
Oh my gosh! Yep, exactly. Like, yep. And so eventually, there will be a foot there. It'll just be stepping on this weird, mushy pile of zombies. Yeah. That's crazy. But so in the end, I think I don't know if there's anything else you want to explore in this.
No, I think there are a couple of other things. This is a report.
The age. Do you want to talk? So age is, I don't think this is any surprise. Yep. Younger people were more likely to have heard of AI than older.
It's younger people, more men versus women, more educated versus less educated, which is the same, almost irrespective of which sort of technology you ask people.
Yep, about. Exactly. And it falls. That sort of falls in those sort of tried and true tropes of how we see those things fall across. And again, no surprise. With any advanced technology or emergent technology, innovation, whatever, it's always the more the more affluent countries, the more wealthy countries who get access first, who get, so it's not a surprise that those results are also mirroring that sort of known,
that's exactly it. Yes.
Unfairness of how these things are distributed over a global scale and things like that. But
yes, no, I would highly recommend people dig into this. It is easy to digest.
Yep.
It is really quite revealing, even if you just spend a few minutes looking at it.
Yeah.
And again, it raises this question of how do we have the open, honest conversations about what we want the world to be like with AI?
Absolutely. I think that's the sort of like, I would just chip into that to say the final call here is like, this is a wonderful thing to start. Again, whatever your context bubble is, right? Whether you're in industry, whether you're in education, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in the US, in the EU, in Australia, wherever, we have a beautifully diverse international audience for our show. So this could be hitting, I think it's like 175 countries or something like that.
Yep.
So wherever you are too, even if your country was not one of those ones listed on here, this is a great, I think, catalyst to start having those conversations and to start thinking about, again, what is the heat map? What is the current temperature right now?
Yes.
I mean, even in your own context, right? Taking this idea and looking at it like, we can do the same thing in our university, in higher education.
So actually, I was going to ask you that. Sort of one final thing before we move on to the next AI agenda item, which I think I know what it's going to be. But we're sitting here in a public university. We are working with students who are going to be the leaders of the next generation. Looking at this, what sort of conversation should we as a university, and by sort of extension, other universities, what conversations should we be having with our students?
Yeah, I think I think that is the question, and also a fantastic transition.
Okay,
you knew. Did you see what was? Can you see?
No,
my laptop?
I didn't. I had no idea what was coming next.
So I think that's a great way to transition also to something else I wanted to talk about, which I think is again because, and I wanted to talk about the Pew thing first because of the trust issue that's highlighted. So with these, and if you're wondering, like, where, again, dig in the methodology section, they talk about how they found their participants. Also, it is a randomized selection of people. It's a method that's been used. It's not perfect, but it's a method that's been used for a long time. So it is trying to get at the average American or the respondent in that case, right?
Yes.
But the trust is very low, or I should say, the distrust is high.
Yes.
And I think one of the things when you ask the question about what should we be doing at in the institution of higher ed, I was having a conversation the other day and I got really fired up about it. I'll do my best to not fire up. Let's stay calm and cool and collected.
So where's the Sean mute button on this deck? Yes.
It's right there. There is one. It's right there. And just to prove that it does in fact work.
Okay.
Just make sure.
That was Sean muting himself.
That's right. Never to be done again. So what got me fired up was, again, there is no, and again, the perception bubble of, if around here, I feel like, and when I say here, I mean, ASU, and by extent, you can probably say any large university in the United States. You're never far from the word AI at any, whether you're student, staff, but the question is what are we doing about that?
Right.
And that's one of the things where I get really fired up because in the moment, what had spurred me to get so fired up was I feel like all we see are these, the glossy version of like, hey, we're amazing with how we're using AI.
Right.
And, fill in the blank, whether that be we're using AI to reach scale and size, or we're using it in our teaching, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with people sharing the successes because I think that's great. But where I got really agitated was I'm like, I think right now, especially given just certainly the domestic climate with higher education, even internationally, I'm like, and we've talked about this before, even going way back, where we talk about the move of the bulk of the research and innovation in artificial intelligence moving out of institutes of research and higher ed into business. Thank you DeepMind, thank you OpenAI, all these places, right? But what I got really kind of agitated about was I'm like, I feel like we are missing a phenomenal opportunity to do exactly that, to prepare the next generations of leaders, people who are going to be making those policies, how we regulate these tools, people who are going to be building these tools, and also just the duty to the public that we're missing this opportunity to open sort of the doors in a transparent mode to show the world how higher education institutions, and because this is the work we always do, but a lot of the time it hides and sits behind closed doors, behind journals, behind whatever, where it's like we should be more transparent about the way that we are grabbing these tools, putting them into situations, we're testing them, we're asking the what ifs. What if we do it this way? What if we try that? What happens if you do it this way? And sharing all of those failures and successes. And then saying, here are what we're finding.
Because the failures are part of the process.
So
anybody
important.
who makes anything knows that there is that process of honing and refinement where you're basically working out what needs to be removed or changed that doesn't work so you have a better product at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, because the way I was thinking about it, I'm like, our job is not to say this is good or bad. we could say it causes harm, and then you can say, well, harm is not good.
But you've got to have that sort of broader perspective and understanding. So what's going through my head as you're talking about this is thinking about everything we know about communication engagement around science and technology.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've known for decades now is if you take a boosterism approach, if you try and convert people into believing, say, that science is wonderful or technology is wonderful, you will lose them because you lose trust.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we saw with vaccines.
Yeah.
Many people turned away from vaccines or what they were being told about vaccines because they lost trust, because they felt that somebody was just giving them one side of the argument. They were just trying to tell them everything is 100% safe, 100% great, trust us and you'll be fine.
Sure.
As soon as you say that, you lose trust.
And that's a breeding ground for conspiracies. Because
that's exactly it. Because they say, what are you not telling us?
And then there is one thing, right?
That's right.
And that one thing may be a truth or maybe a fact. And then it's like, aha, I knew it. And then that explodes these other ideas.
Whereas we know the best way to do this is to be open and to be honest and transparent, sort of give the rough with the smooth, engage, be willing to actually listen and change your perspectives depending on what other people say. You build a bridge, you build trust, and you build confidence in not only what you're saying, but the technology itself.
Yeah. And I think, and again, I feel like a role of a university or just higher education institution, right, is not only investigating it as a technology for teaching and learning, right? Teaching, again, with, through, and about. Sure, that's great. But also about doing the research in a way that, the institution isn't financially linked to the success or failure of it. Right. So it's impartial, right? If you use these tools, you can say, and I think for me, like, that's the point, is what should be coming out of this, right? Is the public, anyone, including for-profit organizations, should be able to look to the research and find the opportunities for individual use, find the economic opportunities for creating new products, companies, and services, but also recognizing and seeing the challenges or the potential harms, to recognize those, to say, these are things that we need to address for our own societal benefit by creating regulations, by creating laws, by creating, norms in an industry or what have you, based on this research. And it's like, it should be this transparent living laboratory where, again, you can see it, you can get access to it. And my fear is that universities likewise get wrapped up in the same, like, we got to do it now and do it fast and do it.
It's the boosterism.
It's the boosterism. And so, and people by nature, it's, it's a vulnerable space that a lot of times, individuals, groups, organizations entirely are not comfortable sharing. There's no shortage of mistake, even high level projects that went sideways or went toes up, whatever. But again, not sharing that creates this level of it weakens the trust.
That's exactly it. Yes. Or it fosters distrust.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives evidence where you are, even if it wasn't the intent, it creates a way that you can be caught where it's like, you've only been sharing one side. And now it looks like, even if it wasn't intentional, it looks like you were trying to hide.
And we know this. People that study communication and engagement know this. They know it deeply. It's very, very hard to convince people that being open and honest and transparent actually builds trust, and it increases the opportunities for communication and engagement rather than shuts them down.
Yeah. And it's not, and again, I think about this even from like an individual level, right? It's hard when you are trying something and you get really excited.
Right.
And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then you just want to go shout it and you want to tell the world.
Yes,
What you don't tell them is you're like, well, actually, the three things I did before this that were absolute rubbish and garbage that make me feel small and insignificant, you don't want to share those. But, and I think about like just even from like the ed tech world side of things, right? That maybe there's a part of me that's always been an old cranky man. It's just like inside. But I still remember back, 2010 when the iPad and, the iPhone was already out, 2007. iPad comes out in 2010.
I love that you got those dates.
Oh, they are seared into the folds of my brain. Because along with that came this sort of pithy, it was picked up, kind of construed out of advertising. It was, there's an app for that.
Right. Yes.
And it became, and what frustrated me at the time was, as I was fighting with this idea of, the technology at the time is wonderful and it's great. And as we're thinking about this from a pedagogical standpoint, and how do we leverage these technologies and tools to, enhance teaching and learning, not replace, not whatever, but just really, and to create a new, going back to the TPAC model, those kind of things, is like, the point is you have to understand how the technology works, what it's doing, so that you can understand how to apply it to really move those levers back and forth. And the minute everyone started saying, don't worry about it, there's an app for that, I got really frustrated because it was like, just, forget it. Don't worry about it. You don't have to think about it anymore.
But
just,
you
there's
lose
an app
agency.
for that.
And ironically, we talk about agentic AI, but so many of these things actually rob us as humans of agency.
Yeah.
We give it away to other people or other things.
You offload it. And now when someone says, well, tell me and demonstrate, out of this. You're like, well, there's an app for that. It's like, well, that doesn't help. Like, okay.
It's like people who just sort of rely on their browser to remember their password. They and so the moment that their browser goes down and they're asked, what's your password? They say, I don't know. I just sort of opened the tab.
It's just, the password thing, that just triggered me too. Because you're like, anytime you're helping someone, you're like, what's your password for, whatever it is? You're like, what's your password for Apple Music? You're like,
I don't know.
Well, I certainly don't know.
So this is going to be how society collapses. One day we're going to reach a critical mass of people who have no idea what their passwords are.
And it just gives up the ghost.
Right.
Okay, so I have something.
Okay,
so
sorry, we've probably got totally off track.
No, the scary thing is, Andrew, I think we're becoming so in sync with this stuff. I'm like, and speaking of total information collapse, let's talk about Atlas, ChatGPT's new browser.
Yes.
So I've been playing this.
So we should set the scene. So this will come out a few days after Atlas came out, but this is OpenAI's answer to Google Chrome and other browsers. They claim that this is the one browser to rule them all, which has got an embedded AI into it.
Yeah. It's been out. So as of today, it's been out for 29 hours or something.
Right.
So I've been playing with it. I picked it up right away. So I'm looking out, and I'll put the link to OpenAI's sort of their their news story about it or whatever. Befuddled, I think, is the word.
Right.
Befuddled, leading to sort of someone like if this was a movie, I feel like I've discovered the plot, right?
I know, because we were talking and all these conspiracy theories come out.
Oh my gosh! So here's the deal. So it's ChatGPT Atlas. It is available, I'm assuming, across platforms. I only see
I think
Mac OS
only
version.
available on Mac at the moment, but they're bringing it out to other platforms. Yes,
that's okay.
Which is odd. Yes.
All right. So if you're thinking about it, I will say that's where you go *? That's odd.
Yes.
So why? I'm curious we'll get into that. But so it is a full-on browser that you download and install, if for people who don't know or aren't familiar, a browser is a software application that you run on your machine that is capable of executing code. That's how you ingest the web. Yep. You visit pages that serve it HTML code and other web-based codes, and this thing compiles them and runs it, right?
Yep.
So now they're offering Atlas, which in their words says, bring ChatGPT with you across the web for instant answers, smarter suggestions, and help with tasks, all with the privacy settings you can control. And I'm like, first thing, I was like,
you're sort of angling for a job with OpenAI, aren't you? The voice of OpenAI.
Or just can I be the cranky guy who's just like, hey, come on, you can't. So, so again, my initial reaction was, why?
Right.
A browser? What do I need this for? So I download it, I install it. Interestingly, right away in the installation, it's asking me these questions that started raising red flags. And I am a person, again, I've been in information technology for almost 30 years. You see these red flags from software all the time where you're like, no, you can't have access to this. And thankfully on the Mac, the platform, it is very aggressive about not giving access without your permission.
Right. Yes.
But you're like, no, you may not do that. No, you may not have access.
And it's all supposedly so he can get to know you better.
Yeah. And so what I hoped, because this is a downloadable app, I think my hope was, hey, this will run on device.
Yep.
The things that it considers to be private,
But it relies on an internet connection, Sean.
I know. But it doesn't have to. See, that's the thing, right? It runs, there is software on the machine.
But it's an internet browser, Sean.
Well, and so here's where the plot thickens, right? So I've got it open, I've got it installed here, and I've got it open. And initially when you look at it, it's an odd mix because it is literally, you can type in a URL, or it's the same sort of chat bot field. So it's like URL or question to ChatGPT.
Right.
Now, of course, you link this, you log in with your credentials. But it was the privacy element that really threw me.
Right.
Because originally it said it's going to be private. You control that. I'm thinking on device, on local model, or control of that. That's wonderful.
Yep.
That's not the case. What is the case is it controls the privacy settings that you allow it, just like you do with your normal your normal piece.
Yep.
The problem that starts to arise very quickly from my viewpoint when you're using this is you're like, okay, why would they do this? And I have some questions. And so if anyone out there has any answers, I would love to hear them, because the browser has long been the keyhole to which you, the user, view the world.
Right.
Right. So, and now, is that perfect? No. Google, Chrome has had its issues as well. I mean, Safari, these are all, I mean, again, this is Google, this is Apple, this is Microsoft. These are large tech companies who produce these browsers. But there are also tons of open source ones, the Mozilla project, Firefox. I mean, it goes on and on and on. You have agents that you can choose, but if you think about the activities that you do through your web browser, it's most of what you do aside from things that are app contained, right? Especially on a computer, not a smartphone or a tablet, right?
And we should just say what that includes. It includes what you search for, what you read, what you spend time on, what you focus your attention on, because it can pick up all of these things. So if you're reading an article, it can tell how long you spent on that article, which bits of the article you focused on, where you went from that article, sort of how you sort of develop a series of searches or sort of links from that. It can actually begin to build a very, very sophisticated profile of you.
Very. And that profile is something that browsers have had the capability to do. And now, to be fair, right, a lot of people in this food chain, if you will, do. It's your internet service provider. It's the browser. It's all of the things that they can learn about you. The cookies, remember the cookies, right? All these little tiny signals and files that you store, right, that signal things about you and your behavior. Those are used for, well, you hope for conveniences, right? So when you come, it takes you back to the place you were.
Right, but also targeted ads. We've
also
all seen
the
those,
juiciest thing you can sell, right? Why are so many services free? Well, because you are the product that's being sold to other agencies. And what sort of hit me that was very unsettling was also just in relation to the conversation we were having last week about ChatGPT and Walmart and Amy Webb's comment about how that was sort of threatening to completely wipe out the existing internet-based economy infrastructure for this new model. And suddenly I had this thought that was terrifying, which, because it's like, what better way to choke out the rest of all of that pipeline of that economic sort of infrastructure than to also get a stranglehold on the browser to the conduit to which all of the other internet-based activities are conducted. And that's, I mean, so again, is that a bad thing? It's not about good or bad. It's about understanding that if you're using this browser,
understanding the dynamic,
what's happening when you're putting your bank account information in. And because with just like the other ChatGPT and things, again, one of the benefits of memory is that it knows more about you and it knows all this stuff. But do you want it to know these things?
See, that's it. Yeah. So actually, I was going in another direction, but I think there are huge questions around sort of what happens to the data you put in and what happens with how it learns about you. But where my mind was going, in class this week, we were watching the movie Ex Machina.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
And one of the things that comes out of that, for anybody not familiar with the story, it's about an AI, very, very manipulative AI that was developed, a really powerful story. But in the story, the way that AI was trained was on an equivalent of Google. It's called Blue Book. And the story goes that the developer of this AI realized that you could basically learn everything about people through their internet browsing habits. And now we've got exactly this. We've got an AI embedded in an internet browser, which in principle can learn layers upon layers upon layers, not only about you, but about how humans work, how human society works, the factors in there which allow you not only to understand that, but to manipulate behavior. And this raises huge red flags. And hopefully OpenAI are going to put guardrails here.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're giving away data where we have no idea how an advanced AI can begin to sort of slot that together to reveal things about us that we really would not like others or a machine to understand and know, because it can be used again to manipulate us.
And again, on that same vein, one of the realizations here is like, you know, you could argue, right, that if you go to a search engine and you're searching for something, right, you are getting a colored access to, you know, well, there's two thoughts. One is no one probably really wants unfettered access to the true open web, right? Because you'll be, you know, you only make that mistake once. But you could say, okay, well, that's still coloring my view of the world. If I use Google, if I use Bing, if I use, you know, DuckDuckGo or whatever any of these other search engine might be, you know, RIP, Alta Vista and Lycos.
But they're passive. They deliver other people's content to you rather than deciding how to mold and form that
And
content.
even if they're gaming the ranking of what happens, right? You still, your portal to the information that is available is your browser.
Yes.
And the thing that I was thinking about too is exactly that, is like same with that sort of economic model of asking ChatGPT to buy you sneakers or whatever. And it's like, well, whichever shoe company gives it the most money, guess whose shoe it's buying.
Right.
Well, same idea with the browser is not only, so now that coloring wouldn't happen only at the search engine level, but at the browser level itself.
Yes. Yep.
So how do, and this is the question, how do we know that it is not doing that?
Yes.
How would you? And I hope, and you know, this is early, so I'm hoping that some of these answers will come out as.
But
you know,
it underlines this need to have the conversation, and it may be this is a great product, and I've played with it, and I honestly couldn't see the point in it. But others have written about it, saying this is a game changer. But the important thing to me is the conversations. It may be great, but if we're not having the conversations around what the consequences of this are and what the potential downsides are. Who is going to be making the decisions?
How do you know it's great?
Yes.
Right? And how do you know it'll stay that way?
And so I'm assuming, from what I saw, you can either use it so it just serves web pages as they are, or you can use it to serve information about web pages. Is that correct? Or you can get it to interrogate web pages?
Yep. So I was playing, what I've seen also, you know, people post on LinkedIn, for example, they were posting, of course, right away, like, oh, look, I can use the new browser to do my homework on Canvas or whatever. And I'm like, I've not been able to get it to, I don't know. I need, maybe I'm just using it wrong. I'm holding it wrong.
But actually, we should flag this. So if this is a possibility, because so our students use this learning management system called Canvas, where they bring everything up in a browser. You've got all your assignments in a browser, whether they're quizzes or whatever. If you had an agent where you had that in your internet web browser and you could tell the AI just to fill this in, now you've basically sort of removed the friction completely between sort of an assignment and an AI doing it for you.
Yeah, you don't even have to copy and paste anymore.
Yeah, and to be sure, even though you've seen it on LinkedIn, we haven't been able to sort of see whether this is actually possible. But this is the way things are going. In principle, it is possible.
Yeah. Well, and instantly too, I think, you know, there's a concept I don't know if it's proprietary to the Canvas learning management system, but they have a lockdown browser mode. I'm sure they all do.
Right.
Where to prevent students from, you know, again, having like an online quiz or something, and then opening up another browser window to you know, copy paste or whatever, even if it's just their notes, whatever. But I'm like, I wonder how a lockdown browser would work within this.
You realize, I wonder how quickly policy is going to follow this. But I'm just thinking about our own institution, ASU, where now every student has got access to ChatGPT. They haven't got access to the browser yet, but I think that's probably coming. But you can imagine a counter policy that says you are not allowed to use the OpenAI browser if you're using Canvas.
Yeah, maybe. Which again, you can... Yeah, Canvas can do a test to see what browser's hitting it, but you can hide that.
Right, yes,
anyway, it becomes this technological cat and mouse game.
It raises questions. And going back a little bit in the conversation, the question I had is about the filter between content and what you see.
Yeah.
Because now if you're increasingly relying on an artificial intelligence engine or agent to filter that content, so it decides what to show you, how to summarize it, how to reform that information.
Yeah.
Now the information you're getting has been manipulated in a way which hopefully is neutral. But how do you know it's neutral?
Exactly. And here's the thing. Here's a question that I need to do. I might be able to do it live here in a second. So to test the agentic mode, because it offers again, a lot of the tools are familiar in this. So basically, for if you're listening, I'll describe this. So I'm looking at what looks like a regular web page, but on the side of it is sort of carved out like what would be your ChatGPT window. It's sort of tucked in on like the edge. And then you have all your tools. So it really, in some ways, you're like, okay, it saves me from having to go back and forth. I guess. But so I asked it. So it's no surprise to anyone who listens to our show, at least for the long category. I'm a big Nikon shooter, right? So cameras. I love my Nikon or my Nikon for the rest of the world. So I asked it. There's a new camera came out. Famously, Nikon and the cinema camera have merged a while back, and their new sort of hybrid camera came out. It's called the Nikon ZR. And I said, I went to B&H, which is a massive retailer for all these things. And I turn on the agentic mode and I say, find me all the information about the new camera and give me a rundown and give me all the analysis of it, whatever. And of course it does it, but what I was expecting was to watch this agentic mode like navigate the website for me. Did not do that at all.
Okay, it sort of slips behind.
It kind of pulls up and then, and I've on other websites, I've had it try to do a thing where it's like, I can't see that. Can you press the next button? I'm like, I thought you were, what's the point of this then? But anyway, it pulls up this stuff. It does a normal sort of ChatGPT rundown and response, which I'm like, yeah, cool. Gets everything for me.
Yep.
But then while we were talking, I just asked the browser. I just said, "What's the best camera?"
Yep.
Well, it's a Nikon. Now I would agree, but
millions wouldn't.
But anyone out there holding a Canon or a Sony would tell me otherwise.
Or a Leica, for instance.
Well, I would say if cost is a factor of best, then Leica will never be on the top of that list. They're just too dang expensive. It's like the Hasselblad; they're just too expensive.
Right. Yes.
But it is. Here's a little about it. And it's like our top one. We recommend. But
it takes the cognitive load off you and puts it onto the machine, which also means that it's making decisions for you in terms of what your preferences are or where you're being nudged.
Yeah. And I'm just. Here, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just asking Google what is the best camera. And I'm curious if the results are the same.
Yeah.
If it shows me the same list. No, this one shows Canon.
Yeah.
Canon, Fujifilm, Nikon is not, of course they're on there. It shows them all.
Yeah.
But, and so my question is like, because we know this sort of like the sycophantic, always pleasing nature of ChatGPT, I asked it specifically about a type of camera, and then I asked it what was the best camera.
And it's learned, you think, yes.
And my question is it just showing me, if it's just telling me that because it thinks that's what I want to hear?
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here going, so this is my whole browser now doing this, not just ChatGPT, right? And so
then you have to ask, and this is us speculating.
Sure.
Maybe everything is great here and above board, but if, as you say, our browsers are the interface between us and the rest of the world, and we have a company that is beginning to sort of control that. Is OpenAI beginning to effectively control our world? How we see it, how we perceive the world, how we respond and react to the world?
Yeah, I mean, jokingly, I've heard many episodes ago, at one point we were laughing because we were like, we've discovered the plot, which is like they're trying to take over the world.
Right.
And I'm like, with one of these things, you're like, what you can see is I think I mentioned this to you yesterday in passing. I'm like, somewhere I bet on a whiteboard, right, is this like grease outline of the markers. That's like
the 3-step plan for world domination. Number 1, ...
That's right. Number 1, put it on their phones. Number 2, put it on. But you can see how you could see very quickly how this browser launch fits in a strategy to become like a single platform.
Yes.
A single, like everything platform or a single, whatever you want to call it, which is what they would want, right? Also, maybe even just from a technical perspective of training data.
Yes.
Because we've kind of run out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
is how better to continuously feed the machine than to just make sure you get everything.
Right.
Yes, so, and again, when you think about that, when you add up all these things, the reason that this makes me concerned, and right now I have this thing air gapped in the sense where it knows nothing. I turned off all the memory things. I don't do anything on here that I don't assume is being watched. Right. And because if you think about the things where all the things we know about our data in the sense of social media, what's happening in terms of that exchange of information out, information in, all of the different things you might do, health. Now, how many things do you do from your health perspective that are all through like my chart, or you fill in the blank for your, the web-based thing for your test results, all these kind of everything.
Yes.
And now you have a platform that's like, don't worry, we'll sit there and it'll all just exchange through us. And we'll, again, maybe it's not a nefarious purpose, but we will take from that exchange what we need because it's free. It's free. We'll take it.
So huge number of questions. And it may be that OpenAI is in the process of addressing them, but even that idea of bringing up confidential records. In fact, actually, I'm going to give you another example, which I think people won't be allowed to do this. So say you're in a organization like ASU, you're dealing with private confidential information about students, which is protected by law, but you're doing it through a browser because that's the only way you can do it. And you're using OpenAI's browser. To what degree do you know that those data are 100% protected? Or whether there's any leakage? Because again, you've got that AI sort of layer between what you're seeing and what actually exists in the database.
That's a great question. Like, I mean, even just something like, maybe the most benign like grades.
Right.
If I literally go to my grade book and it's in this platform, have I just given those grade?
Okay, I'm going to have to try this because if I can go in and I can open my grade book and say sort of give me a stats summary of those grades, it's immediately taking that information, it is processing it somewhere and giving me stuff back, which means there's data leakage.
Yeah, so here's the thing, and I'm looking at this right now, and I'm going to just put a big old pause. I can see the cliff. Because here's the thing. Right now, in this particular browser, if I go to a URL, let me just type in canvas.school.edu, whatever. The site can't be reached. Interesting. What I can't see right off the bat is I don't see any of the HTTPS certifications. I don't see any of So normally, for example, for people, if you're understanding, we're like, well, yeah, but Sean, why would Safari or Chrome or anything else be any bit? There's web protocols that encrypt the information. So HTTPS is the encrypted version of that. So when you're typing things into a field like your username and your password, those are being sent to that service in an encrypted way, not in plain text, which is, HTTP.
Right, yes.
And so the challenge that I have now is I'm like, even in this browser, if I put in the URL, I don't see I can't see how I access the site's certificate.
Right.
So that begs the question, if you type in anything like a password, or if you type in, your university ID and login, even if it has two-factor, I'm like, well, how do you know that there's not in the cybersecurity space, we would call that a man in the middle. How do you know that there's not an entity, maybe not human, maybe it's just a generative AI tool or a large language model. But how do you know that you're not passing that first to this entity in the man in the middle is so misogynist, person in the middle, entity in the middle. Because I can't see right now, I'm literally typing in HTTPS and I cannot see the certificate.
Right. Interesting. Yep. So while you've been doing that, I have actually gone using Atlas to my enrollment information in my courses. So this is information on students and what they're studying, where they are at ASU, a whole bunch of things. And I just asked, analyze these data. And it gave me a full analysis of the students in my class.
Yeah. That's a red flag and a siren.
That is a huge. And thankfully, there's not that much that's controversial here, but there is stuff, including sort of student emails and stuff like that.
I mean, even the grades. I mean, even technically, you're not even allowed to post like the courses they're enrolled in publicly in any way, shape, or form.
Yep. So definitely, there is a transfer of confidential information between this browser and whatever is doing the processing at OpenAI's side.
Yeah.
which I think is probably something somebody needs to ask questions about pretty fast. Because at the moment I can access everything through this.
And then you can, I mean, here's I'm going to use some cybersecurity terms here, but that also then allows you to start to, it's a terrible term, so apologies up front. It allows you to start to finger data, and you can actually go and say, now tell me about this. And now you can take that information and go search it elsewhere to find out how these, this is bad. Well, and now, but think about if you did that with your bank account. You logged in with your bank account.
Yes. Yep.
And whether you say, now analyze this for me or not, again, how do you know it's not already doing that?
Yes. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Building that profile of you, building that thing. Oh, well, wow, you sure spend a lot on comic books or, whatever. Like maybe you should think about that. Yes. Sean, you'll never afford that Leica because you keep spending all your money on these stupid comic books or something.
Right.
I'm like, hey, man.
Yep. There you are. So again, a lot of questions.
A lot of, and again, it leaves you with, for me, what I don't like is it leaves me with a feeling of, it leaves me with a little bit of an icky feeling, which again, coming back kind of to that idea of not, I mean, I would say they're a for-profit. They're just, they're not for-profit yet, but, they're naturally going to boost their own stuff.
Right.
But I'm like, so tell me about this security again, because and, even in, I've always used ChatGPT, whichever version it's been, the $20 a month, the $200 a month, always with the expectation that there's always an expectation that what you put in there is never truly private. Right. Yes, I've never shared, even if because I've put in medical stuff before, but I don't put in all of it. I put in the language that came from the radiologist.
Yes. Yep.
Not my medical record ID, not those kind of things. And with that, there's always this grain of salt where you're like, well, it's all private. We don't train it, all this kind of stuff. However, we do know that I think it's the Wall Street Journal, the lawsuit that is going back about with OpenAI. The judge has enforced that OpenAI retain every single prompt that every user puts in.
That's it. Yes. Yep.
Even though OpenAI didn't want to. They don't want to do that.
Right.
Because that's a liability.
But
they want to purge that.
How does that work with this? Yes.
How does that work with this? So now you have so now, even if it's against what they want to do as an organization, currently they're being forced to do exactly that. Hold on to everything you put in there. Yes. Because it's meant to be held for discovery for the legal process, which is normal. That happens, right? It's not an unusual thing. But in this case, you're like, wait, so that means it's a blanket, requirement for however many tens, hundreds of thousands of users and all of their information. Yeah. Like, man, this is
So we should probably come back to this at some point, but just before we wrap this up. So I've been looking at my Canvas shell for my course, which has, looking at the grade book, which has all of the students and all of their grades. And I can put in the name of a specific student and ask, how are they doing? And it'll give me a full rundown of everything and give me suggested actions on what I might want to do next with them. But also looking at this, it gets it wrong. So it pulls out data with 100% certainty and tells me the corrective actions I need to take. But the data analysis is wrong.
Yeah. Because again, it's not, again, it's just a tokenized probability machine. Right? So you're like, tell me what Sean needs. And it's like, beep, boop, bop, beep, boop. He needs this. You're like, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm going to get out of this fast because I am feeling very, very icky about sort of using a browser where I have no idea where the data are going, how they're being used, how they're being stored, and what is leaking out of this.
Burn it. Let's bury it and then bury the shovel. Right?
Yep.
Oh, time to get out of that.
Anyway.
All right. So we went way longer than I thought we would today already on all those things. But I do want to end. We'll end with if you would allow. I think we should end. We'll end on a light note. We'll come back to everyone's favorite, the internet's most fun Futures game segment on a podcast. Futures Improv, and I prepared. I promise
we've got to have this in because I know you've prepared. For
I promise. What people can't, and maybe you can. If you're watching the video, you might be able to see my board. I have 6 jingles. 3. We'll use these over time, and because they're all bad. I will say. Well, I shouldn't say bad. They're all interesting. All but 2 of them are pure slop. Okay. So here we go.
It's time for Futures Improv. Boot it up, light it right, sparks
This is the point where you fade it, Sean.
Oh, you've got to get...
Weird and undefined.
And then it keeps going. Future's Improv. Also, so I use Suno to create this.
Yeah.
I will say one of the hardest things with that is getting it to do anything short.
Right.
I'm like I want 10 seconds. It's like, yep, here you go. 3 minutes and 35. I'm like, no. 10 seconds. Here you go. 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, back to our favorite game show, Future's Improv. How about we just do 2?
Yes.
Just for time today. And so again, if this is the first time you've heard Future's Improv, it's where we ask generative AI to give us some wild, wacky scenarios. We toss it out. We chew on it. We try to make some sense of it. And then we move on and usually have a good time and a good laugh. All right. Category time. Time, pop culture, space, cities, and speculative worlds, society and culture, biotech, or boring AI and ethics. Let's
do pop culture.
Okay.
Which is gonna fail badly because I am so bad here.
Well,
but it makes it interesting.
I like this one.
Yes.
Okay. It's in this particular scenario. It's called The Last Library.
Okay.
AI claims it has read everything humans ever wrote and now suggests deleting the archives. Do we let it? All right. So we're already kind of there. AI has read everything we've done. So now the question is, what do we do with all that information?
Yeah, well, we create space. All of those libraries with all of the physical stuff, all of the digital stuff, we need that space. Why not just delete it all? You do this on your computer all the time.
Hey, books take up a lot of space that could be used for more data centers. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Or actually, you could burn the books and fuel the data centers.
We need more energy.
This is
burn those
ChatGPT's nefarious plan. It's going to scarf it all up. It's going to encourage us. It's going to manipulate us all using Atlas into burning the books to fuel the data centers.
Dear user, if you would like more video slop, I'm going to need 12 books. It's like just insert book and burns them.
No, what a dreadful idea. What an awful idea.
But what this reminds me of, though, is like, okay, so there is an existential threat nested inside this, right?
Yes.
Which is, of course, so in the US, for example, we have things like the Library of Congress, where that does keep records of all of these.
Well, all of the books which are actually registered with them.
Yes.
So I discovered that recently. You have to register your book, but then they keep a copy.
Then they keep a copy of it. And there's a massive push to digitalization, but also, so I will also claim, right? So, and this kind of ties into other conversations about the future of museums, because as the times change and people do less and less even artistic work in canvas and oils and things like that, and more of it is digital.
Yep.
How are we storing those archives for posterity?
And I've written about this because it's something I obsess about. The fact that digital archives are incredibly fragile.
Yeah.
And there have been moves to make them robust. But the fact is, so say you take something which is sort of created in stone, sort of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, it will last for thousands of years, and you can pull it out and you can still do something with it. And yet we now have digital files that you can't open just 2 or 3 years after they've been made.
Absolutely.
So they do not have that long-term resiliency.
Absolutely. And for me, I think I love this project, the Internet Archive.
Yes.
It's archive.org. If you haven't gone there, it's a couple, I should say it's many things. One is it is literally trying to be the archive of all digital things of human activity. 2, within there is every piece of nostalgia you could ever imagine from your childhood.
If you know where to find it.
Yes, if you know, including all the old computer games, and computer software, and all this stuff. The thing that I don't like, and it's nothing to do with the Internet Archive, it's that why is there only this independent? Why do we not have? Where is like the National Museum or Archives, and maybe other? I'd be curious to hear too if other countries have a digital first sort of preservation movement, because this is something that's bothered me for a long time. I feel like we've been living in this weird overlap between the old analog world where art was in stone and paints and things like that we know how those survive the test of time because we still have them.
Right. Yes.
But when so much of the creativity, both in terms of like, I mean, how many reams of paper and notebooks do you have laying around that have your thoughts and ideas down? Right. Probably not very many. I keep a handwritten journal type notebook thing, but all my writing is electronic.
Right.
You know, that can just disappear like that.
Yep.
And you know, even with an artistic perspective, how much is going into digital art, right? Video games. I mean, all these things. And what is the museum of those? Because what we're, you know, if you think about
how do you decide what to curate? Because not everything is kept. And if you look at museums,
sure. Oh, they only keep
there's a science to curation.
Absolutely. And you know, so it raises those questions. And then I think about this. I'm like, well, what are the major like digital art that people will look at 100 years from now in terms of what we were making and painting and doing in terms of that digital art, whether that be through photography or even just like art, you know, digital illustration. And that's just a very direct connection between old art and new art or something, but also in just the libraries of what we're creating in terms of our written work. I would be curious to learn how much ends up actual in book form that is retained in a traditional method versus things that only ever live from existence to obscurity of what has existed digitally.
And I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that people have looked at this and looked at the balance of sort of hard copy versus digital copy, and digital copy is just obviously exploding.
Well, and I know, I mean, photography is a great example that I forget what year it was a long time ago, that more photographs were taken in 1 year than in the entire history of photography in general, right? But it raises this big question of like, and also you made a good point, is the software, right? So if you're of a certain age, you will know that you probably have a floppy drive somewhere in your closet, buried deep down in that box of junk you've been promising yourself you were going to tackle.
How are you going to read it?
How the hell are you going to read that? Or even things like the CD, you know, going back, like, did you burn a CD? Right. And knowing that the burnable
have you got
material,
a CD player the CD-ROM player?
I have small, you know, they're not small anymore, but like when I had really small kids, you know, somehow you end up with like a DVD of like Peppa Pig or something, and you're like, how do I play this?
Right. Yes.
I don't have a DVD player hooked up to my TV. None of my laptops have DVD players. I'm like, how the hell do I play this thing?
Does it?
I had to buy an external DVD drive.
But even just apps. So going back to, I would say even 2005, I was writing documents when I worked for the US government using government procured word processors and spreadsheet packages that I can no longer read because those apps are no longer available. And those, unless I go to specialist translation software, I cannot read any of those files anymore. That's only from 20 years ago.
No, absolutely. And then you have this issue too of like, I mean, even the app itself in a way is a creative artistic thing.
That's it, yes.
And so again, you know, I can't say enough good things about the Internet Archive because they do their best to try to grab everything that they can. But even that is like, you know, it's this challenge of within the digital software because things move. Like how do you, even the medium, right? Like a DVD, especially if it's a rewritable, the rewritable component is an organic layer that's buried inside that plastic.
That's right. It degrades over time. Yes.
Your flash drive that you have all your, you know, cool stuff on, right? Over time, it takes a while, but over time, it will lose its electrical charge in those capacitors, and there goes your stuff.
Gone. Yes.
Right. And so even if you're like, well, I'll just put all this stuff on a hard drive and save it. Well, unless even that, a magnetic spinning disk drive those are harder and harder to come by these days. That's not, I mean, again, if it loses its magnetic charge, those ones and zeros get flipped.
Somebody drops it.
Oh yeah, someone drops it. You know, I mean, so even what you think of as like permanent storage in a digital capacity is not. It's not.
No, and I think there are people that are thinking seriously about this, but not enough people.
Not enough.
Because we are beginning to live in a transient world where our history is disappearing.
It's disappearing. And then to me, one of the things that is troubling about that is not only that it's disappearing, but as you becomes difficult to go back to it and investigate it, it can be, again, it can be colored.
Yes.
We'll show you the history we want you to see because I'm like,
you're going back to the AI browser.
I can't help it.
Sort of tell me about history. And you know,
That's a trick. I'll log into the Internet Archive through Atlas and tell me.
Yes, yeah.
But so yeah, I mean.
Anyway, so this was supposed to be light, Sean.
I can't help it. I'm sorry. Yeah. And there is. I don't know where it is on this. There is a wah 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 sound effect, but we'll save it. But yeah, so I would say this is something that is. We should even devote an entire episode at some point.
I think we should
about the importance of this and how people are working on this. And also, I love it because I will say right now, if you've got like either a nostalgia trip that you want to take, or you've got young kids going back and playing some of those original 1989 where in the blank is Carmen Sandiego games. They are so fun.
Although I would say, so actually this raises another issue. I know we're eating time here.
That's okay.
But if you don't have the particular sort of code on your computer, like sort of things, what is it, Flash? Or whatever? Yeah, so a lot of the sort of internet games were written in code that you can no longer run.
Yep, so many. I mean, famously, Steve Jobs killed Adobe Flash.
Yes.
But yeah, so many of these games were coded specifically in Flash that don't run.
Yeah.
Also, what's fascinating, speaking of browsers and just how sophisticated they are, is how well they can emulate these old software. Things that back in its day was like, I had to buy this big fancy computer to run this thing. And now
and you can run it in a browser.
Easily. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't even sweat. And you're like, what is happening right now? Yeah.
Are we going to do one final question?
Oh, we'll do one more.
We are going long this week.
I don't think we're going to break the record here, but all right, real quick.
So I got to remind the audience, when we started this, Sean said, we can do a short one this week.
That's the curse. Right. I think if I say those words, what it does is it just remove, I don't think about the time anymore. It's I don't know. It's terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
Last one. So hot take only. We'll do that
hot
way.
Take.
Okay. I like this one. This is a good one to end on. The memory economy. Instead of currency, people trade memories. Which memories become most valuable?
Hot take. I like it.
I like it. It's also, instantly.
How you actually exchange them now, that must get weird.
That's where we're going to need some of those brain-computer implant kind of technology stuff.
Well, it's feeling a little Harry Potter-ish, actually. You sort of extract the memories.
Well,
yes.
It's funny. I kind of went Total Recall on it, right? With this,
you have the memory chip.
Don't have time for that fancy vacation? Come on in for Total Recall, and we'll give you that.
But the fact, in Total Recall, you actually have manufactured memories. But now if you could sell your own, you could have an experience.
Yeah.
And you could sort of duplicate it 10 times. You could go on a fantastic vacation.
A memory donor.
A memory donor, yes.
So you're like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to climb Mount Everest and do all this stuff. You're like, well, there's no way in hell Sean's going up that high on a frozen ass mountain. No way. But you know what? For $25, I'll take your memory.
The memory economy. Yes. Yeah. No, this is going to get dystopian really fast. But yeah, I like that. Equally hand wavy. There's parameters and guardrails that prevent this from becoming that it's purely an entertainment-based thing. Hand waves all over the place to make sure that happens. As I'm like, what a fun idea of being like, hey, I had this awesome. Well, no, very quickly this starts to turn because you're like, I had this awesome memory. Would you like it? I know. It gets a little dirty.
Oh, God,
but actually, I was also thinking about the AI slot because there's going to be a market in AI slot.
Nightmare fuel.
Sora memories. I sort of imagine implanting a Sora video into your head.
I mean, already just watching them, you're like, this looks like a nightmare. Right. And then you're like, and then if it really was, you're like, oh my God, make it stop.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That was awesome. All right. We'll officially exit our game. Let's try this one.
That's it for Future's Improv. Let's power down this rabbit hole and reboot reality.
Okay, fade out. Fade out.
And the funny thing is, you can see the timer on them. They just keep going.
Yes.
Those ones, the ones that are AI slop are way too long. But awesome. So yeah. So if you manage to stay with our show to the end of Future's
Congratulations.
Improv, congratulations. You've earned yourself a homemade certificate of completion.
Which we will insert into your memory. We will donate.
Don't worry about it. How it's going to happen, what we'll see while we're in there. Don't worry about that. Well, it'll be fine. But no, Andrew, thank you for, again, I mean, we covered a lot. We talked about, the world's view on AI. Yeah. We talked about this, the troubling situation with the Atlas. We talked about what the university's role should be around AI. Yeah. And of course, we had everyone's favorite Futures Improv game.
Yep.
What a treat. So a lot to digest.
A lot to digest this week. Yes. So we should leave it a week before the next episode.
We'll leave it there. We'll give your ears a break. We'll let you have time to digest. But I'll everything we talked about, I will stuff those links into the show notes if anyone wants to click on those and continue on. Otherwise, just a final call. Again, if you are enjoying Modem Futura, please help us expand our audience by giving us a subscribe and sharing. And if you have the time, if you would, a rating and review, because those
would be fantastic.
Those really help us reach new audiences, which is fantastic. So much appreciated. And so from Andrew and myself and Modem Futura, we'll see you on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you then.
End transmission.